So yeah, what you just saw is not science fiction and it's not CGI, it's Teslabot's new reality. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I want to go through this 1 minute and 43-second video that just dropped from the Tesla Optimus account on X. Of course, I will leave a link to that in the description. There is music with it. I'm not going to play the music because it's just music, so there's not really anything useful that you can gain from that, and I don't want to get a copyright strike. So I'm just going to go through the video as it is right here, and I'll just stop and talk basically. So we're going to start with this. We get a little, review back, Bumblebee, September of 2022. So this was when I was at AI Day 2 in 2022, September, and we had Bumblebee, and we also had a few renditions of the next version of Teslabot, which is, the Opticon that we have, that's what Scott calls it, that we have out in the malls and everything with the sort of silver, front and the metallic look and all of that kind of stuff. So anyway, we had that. We had Optimus Generation 1. This is what I'm talking about here. Now, of course, the ones that are at the malls don't have all the actuators and everything in them. But, pretty cool bot, but some significant problems with this bot. There were issues with the hands are relatively primitive. They're pretty amazing compared to what everybody else is doing. A lot of companies just have, fists. They just have bald fists. So it wasn't fantastic. There wasn't a ton of movement in the torso. And of course, I know this because I know what's coming next. But anyways, I'm just talking about some of these issues. And then a really big one was that the head had basically no degrees of freedom at all. It was locked in. So this entire torso and head was all one unit. So it'd be as if you as a human was wearing a gigantic brace that went all the way up to your head, down to your torso. So you could sort of move at the waist, and that was about it. And you couldn't really bend, you couldn't move your head around, all of that kind of stuff. And of course, there were issues with the feet and all sorts of other things, but I just wanted to point that out because when we start looking at what's current, then we can see what actually has changed with this. 654,000 views in a couple of hours right now. I think it's about an hour and 40 minutes right now. So yeah, it's getting a lot of views at this point. I don't know if Elon's reposted it yet, but certainly it will be reposted by Elon. If not yet, it will be at some point. So now we're getting kind of a little preview. So very, very different look. We're suddenly into kind of iRobot land here. If you're thinking about the one with Will Smith and everything. This looks a lot cleaner, a lot different, a lot newer. The old one was sort of like worked with the Cybertruck. This one looks much more like it fits in with like the Model Y or something along those lines. So anyway, you can see very white exterior. We've got a different look on the head. We've got, this is really cool, by the way. There is an LED strip that looks like it goes around all the way around the head. So even without like a display on the head, even if it's not saying like, hello, my name is Optimus or something, you could imagine these strips doing things like if it's happy, it's a blue color or something. If it's angry, it's a red color, or maybe it needs to charge up and it turns orange or something like that. So we could get some basic emotional states out of Optimus. I keep wanting to call it Grok because I think that Grok is going to be the interface that we're going to use with Optimus. They don't talk about that here. But anyway, so you could imagine some basic emotional states, some basic communication. You could be like, Grok, did you understand what I said? And it lights up green or something. So you get a pretty quick emotional response. That's a pretty good way of dealing with Optimus if that is the way they do that, because it's sort of like a human being smiling or nodding or something along those lines. You can use the LED bar to give some basic, back and forth in terms of what the state of the robot is. And of course, it just looks cool as well. So why not? And of course, we got the nice Tesla logo across the front, which is pretty cool looking as well. The holidays are here, and that means wonderful time with family and friends, and also the potential to overdo things just a bit. I don't personally bounce back the next day like I used to, and so a night with friends has been a choice. Have a great night or a great next day. That is until I found ZBiotics. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct and not dehydration that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. It's designed to work like your liver, but in your gut where you need it most. Just remember to drink ZBiotics ZBiotics before drinking alcohol, drink responsibly, and get a good night's sleep to feel your best tomorrow. Go to zbiotics.com/Dr. No or scan the QR code on the screen right now to get 15% off your first order when you use Dr. No at checkout. You can also sign up for a subscription using my code, so you can stay prepared no matter the time or the occasion. ZBiotics is backed by a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. After using ZBiotics this fall, I can honestly say it's made a huge difference for those celebratory evenings. I drink a bottle of ZBiotics before hanging out with friends, stay hydrated between drinks, and the next day I feel great. I have to say this is a real game changer for fun nights. So this holiday season, give your family and friends the gift of a better tomorrow with ZBiotics. Just remember, ZBiotics is the drink you drink before drinking. Be sure to head to zbiotics.com/Dr. No and use the code Dr. No at checkout for 15% off. Thanks to ZBiotics for sponsoring this episode, and now let's get back to it. So anyway, moving on, we get to see the whole thing now finally. So you can see that the shape of it is more or less what the original Optimus was, but of course that's a humanoid shape. So not that surprising, but there is a lot of refinement. All of this stuff is now encased. There are no cables on the outside. There's no visible kinds of things. This looks much more like a cobot, as Scott Walter would say. It's a cohabitating robot. It's something that can deal with human beings. Doesn't look like it has pinch points anymore. There were places where the old robot with its exoskeleton around it could pinch a human's hand or feet or something. This looks like it's much less likely to happen. It's difficult to tell whether this is like a hard plastic or an aluminum or something, but given that it's white, I'm going to take a guess that it's probably plastic. It would make the robot a lot lighter to use that as opposed to aluminum. And if it's not necessary structurally, then that would probably be a good idea. Some other quick things to note, of course, the waist is exceptionally small. So it's basically just one actuator in there that's turning the whole upper body of the robot, but it does look a little more graceful this way. The hips, of course, are still very wide. There's a big space in between. You can still see the actuators at the calves, and it looks like there are some actuators and a little bit of, cabling and stuff like that outside of the forearm. But in general, it's much more sleek looking than it was before. And I guess this is their test spot because I think we've seen other bots. I believe when the first generation Optimus did his yoga stuff, it was in front of this exact thing. So anyway, I guess this is maybe their test area or something along those lines. Okay, and moving on. Oh, there we go. We get a head turn. So that's a big first new thing in terms of capability. So remember that before it was completely locked, there were no degrees of freedom. Immediately you saw it turn its head and sort of lead with the head, which is good animation technique, by the way, also. Since I teach character animation, it's like, hey, yeah, you want to lead with the head and everything. So that is a very good look. You can also see it's got this pretty teal sort of look to its LED bar around the outside of its head. So that's very cool as well. And then as it does this, you can see it also is looking up. So we got 1 degree of freedom going this way. We've got another one going up. So the bot is, yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, it's able to look up and down, and that is going to really improve its ability to, follow along with things and also not look creepy. And also you can see that they've somehow hidden this underneath this mesh, whatever that thing is that attaches the head to the torso area. You can see that they've created, they've got that the actuators and everything are hidden under there so that the mesh is stretchable, and that's actually very useful as well. So these other parts are kind of, fixed in place. And so they don't really need to have as much stretchability, but this area up here, the other option would be to have it all open and sort of visible. But again, that could create pinch points and everything. So it's a very good idea to create some sort of stretch fabric that stretches over the outside of this and allows the bot to be able to deal with this in a way that's very elegant. So first new trick for Optimus is the ability to look around and to look up and down. That's very, very cool. And then we keep moving on. So Optimus Gen 2, obviously, and we get, oh, nice. I mean, it's just so much more elegant with the head being able to move. We've got Tesla designed actuators and sensors. Of course, this was all stuff that we had seen before in terms of the development, but these again look very elegant. They're sort of built into the casing now. So there's a whole sort of, as opposed to just sort of shoved in there and oh yeah, good enough and everything. This looks very well designed now. So we're starting to see a design that's incorporating these different elements. Again, we see some soft stuff here, something that's kind of an accordion soft fabric, probably some sort of rubberized, plastic, latex, something like that. So again, to keep pinch points down, this would be an area specifically where a person might put their hand, and the old version of Optimus would squish your hand and it would pinch it and it wouldn't be any good. If you want a cobot or a bot that can cohabitate with humans, you've got to get rid of those points. We've also got this area up here, which looks like it also has some stretch stuff. And the actuators, even though they are exposed, it looks like there's no real pinch points from that as well. And then of course down here, you've got the almost surreal waist. You've got the tiny, tiny little waist that's just that one actuator. It's a very, very big actuator, but it's just the one actuator. And then again, that sort of girdle or pelvis sort of thing that goes out and that connects the two legs, and there's a very wide stance between the two. Pretty reasonable though. I mean, even though I think humans have a lot more flesh over all this stuff, but you can see it's basically shoulder width apart to the outside of the hips, which is reasonable for a human being. So very, very well designed, obviously much more thought in place about operating around humans in a way that is a safe manner to operate. We're also going to look at the hands more closely in just a minute, but you can see that the hands have been redesigned as well. So again, all of these things are Tesla designed, and obviously the bot itself is Tesla designed, and this is a very, very elegant upgrade to the bot. And if we keep going now, you can see 2 degree of motion actuated neck, degree of field, degree of motion, I don't know, anyway, degrees of freedom, there we go, degrees of freedom, there we go, 2 degree of freedom actuated neck. So anyway, it can look sideways and it can look up and down. So that makes it essentially as good as a human. I guess it can't do this sort of motion, but unless you're going to do one of these kind of things and shrug and try to be cynical or something, unless Teslabot is trying to be a 16-year-old, it's going to do just fine. So anyway, 2 degree of freedom actuated neck, cool hands, cool actuators, all of that kind of stuff. Looks around, and again, now it's walking, and this is pretty cool in front of the Cybertrucks. Kind of weird now though, right? The old one looked like it fit with the Cybertrucks. This new one looks much more like, a Model Y or something like that has a really nice paint job on it. So it's very interesting how the look of the bot has sort of changed versus the look of the Cybertruck now. You can also see here from what they say is that the electronics and harnessing have been integrated. When it walks past, look how small it is. We don't have a backpack on the back with a bunch of batteries and the computing chips and all of that kind of stuff in there. This is one of the things that's remarkable about this bot is you've probably seen bots that are this size before, but usually there's a big cable that connects that to the computing device and the powering device and all that kind of stuff. The fact that this is all self-contained in this very, very small, very sophisticated, very elegant form factor is pretty impressive. And also as we go forward, look at how it walks. It's not perfect walking yet. It's almost heel toe. It's still a little bit flat, but there is a little heel toe at the end. It kind of looks like it has clown feet, but you can see a little toe off there at the end. So it's not perfect. It's not as elegant as human stride, but it's really, really getting there. It's a significant improvement. And you can see it's also moving through space much more quickly than the older bots did. It's not shuffling anymore. It's actually walking pretty carefully. So again, we get a close-up of that. Foot force, torque sensing, so it's actually able to sense itself on the ground. It's able to understand where it is. I assume that means it can walk on more uneven surfaces, but at the very least, it has confidence because it's got essentially proprioception. If it's got torque sensing, it knows where it is. It's got proprioception, and it's able to figure out what it's doing, and we're going to see that in the hands in just a second. Continuing forward, again, very elegant walking style. It's not perfect by any means. We can see another one back here, and we're going to actually see 2 at once at the end of the whole thing. But certainly there are more than one of these guys, and we've got sort of a harnessing system, but this looks like it's walking very effectively on its own. I don't see the top open anymore with the there's like a little eyelet or something like that in the Gen 1 so that they could hang it so it wouldn't fall down. So it looks like they've gained enough confidence with this one because this guy here is just held up by something on its back. So it's that like that, but it looks like they are pretty confident that this is not going to fall over anymore because of course you don't want to have it fall over and break because that would suck. Anyway, it says they've got a total of 10 kilograms of total weight reduction. That's a pretty significant amount. That's about 22 pounds if you're American. So that's a large amount of weight shaved off of this without any reduction in the height, apparently, without any reduction in its capabilities. In fact, it's got more capabilities than it did. So this is a significant improvement over the Gen 1 version. Yep, without sacrifice. 10 kilograms reduced, no sacrifice. And this is really impressive. And, this is the kind of thing I will be doing as the ski trip that we're doing in March comes up closer and closer. I will be doing more leg squats, more squat jumps, things like that. But the ability for the bot to balance itself in a squat position that's challenging. It's not the easiest thing in the world, and there's a lot of human beings who can't do this very easily. So it is working really, really well to hold itself up. And you know, again, it's not perfect, but that's a 90-degree bend pretty much that it gets down to. Also really interesting, there was a little finger flex there. So if you watch this again, it kind of, yeah, reaches out with its fingers. So I don't know if that's just that little extra bit of balance it needs. But again, that's pretty close to 90-degree bend. It's not quite perfectly straight up and down, but it's got its center of gravity weighted over the, you know, the heels, over the base of the feet. So it's doing a really good job here. I love that it's also in a regular gym. So I wonder if it's going to pick up the bars next and start curling or something like that, because it's going to get swole. We're going to have swole Optimus. And then, of course, we have 11 degree of freedom, brand new hands. So these hands are really, really cool looking. We're going to spend a little time with that in this next part of the video. And before we do that, though, let's look at the fact that it's able to look at its hand now. That's really impressive. That's a big change from previously. So now you can see hands, and they're really nice. You can see that there's this kind of a motion that's able to, actually it looks like it's able to flex its hands outward a little bit. These look much more like gloves and much less like sort of industrial clubs or something that the old ones were. Looks like we've got, you know, we've got 2 bend points here again, as opposed to a human's 3, but that's perfectly fine for manipulating tools. And it also looks like we've got, it looks like the thumb, the backwards and forwards motion here is exposed, but everything else is pretty well hidden behind some sort of a soft pad. And also these guys have actuators on them so that they're able to feel things now and get a sense of force. So I'm quickly trying to figure out the 11 degrees of freedom. I believe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like this, 9, and then 10 back and forth. And then I'm not quite sure what the 11th is. Maybe this way with the thumb. So something like that. So 11 degrees of freedom with the hands is a pretty substantial improvement. And really, you know, we humans can like bend our knuckles, like these knuckles and stuff a little bit, but it's not, we really don't have a lot of control over those specifically. So unless it's going to be doing like rock climbing or karate or something like that, it probably doesn't need that extra fine degree of control. So these hands, if they work as advertised here, they should be good enough to get this thing into the factory and working and doing more delicate stuff like potentially cooking or something. And again, moving on here. So again, now, yeah, we now get to this part here. So let's take a quick look at this. So we've got left thumb and index finger. There are these black pads that are on the fingers, are apparently force sensors. So as the egg is pushing against the fingers, and the finger and the thumb, the pointer finger and the thumb, you've got the sense of, you know, it's resisting it. So it has a sense, and you can see, you know, I assume that the lighter the color or whatever, the more orangey the color is, the hotter it is, which means the more pressure. So it can sense that in that specific spot, it's got a reasonable amount of pressure on that egg, but it also can tell that it probably doesn't want to put more pressure on it than that because it could crack the egg as well. So I'm assuming that these are not cooked eggs, but you never know. For the test, they might have that, but in the past, I've seen them do that thing with the torque sensor on regular eggs, and then they crack the egg immediately afterwards. But you can see it picking up the egg. I'm going to assume it's an uncooked egg. And then this is really impressive. Look at that. Oh, that's a nice transfer between hands. And then it puts it on the fry thing or something like that. I was not sure exactly what that was. So again, to back that up just a little bit, look at that. That's just beautiful. And it's got these sensing pads. It is possible that these are also sensing pads because now that I look at it, they look very similar. So they might have sensing pads on not just the tip, but also down here as well, which would give a good sense of like gripping a tool or something, right? If you had to grip something like an electric drill or something, you also want to know that you're pushing on it here as well as with the tips of your fingers. So the extra, you know, sensors and everything would be very, very effective for that. And again, from the outside, you can see these hands look much, much nicer than the old ones. They look kind of like a human hand in gloves now, rather than some kind of weird, you know, club or something. And again, it's walking very well. The upper body is really quite attractive. And then we're going to get the bots dancing here at the very end. Yeah, there we go. So we got a little bit of dancing going on. They got a little hip motion happening. You know, they got the waving to the roof and all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty impressive stuff. You can see that they're able to bend in pretty creative ways. The head counter bends. The LED light bar is really cool in that it shows different moods. It's very expressive. And the white on the outside is very impressive as well. So all of it looks amazing. From the outside, it looks really impressive, but much more impressive is what they've been doing on the inside. You didn't get a chance to look at the guts of it, but clearly they've got the battery pack and the hardware for, hardware controllers and all that stuff shoved into the torso without a lump or anything on the back of it anymore. The actuators have shrunk down so that they basically fit inside the bot, except for the calves and the forearms. Everywhere else, they fit in there. The hands are really elegant. We don't have big lumpy things sticking out, not a lot of wires sticking out anymore. There's soft parts all over where the neck is, where the elbows are, things like that, probably where the shoulders come down as well, so that this functions as a cobot now, which was a big concern that Scott had about how this was going to function around humans. But this version of it clearly can function around humans without being dangerous to them, especially if you knock 10 kilograms or 22 pounds off the bot. It's going to be a very, very light bot. So assuming that it can still lift up the same amount of weight that it was able to before, it's going to be a really effective factory bot. And this one is the kind of bot that, as opposed to the old one, which would have been cool to have in the house, this would be just awesome to have in the house. So this is the kind of thing where it would be kick-ass to have this thing and go walk the dogs while you have your bot that was with you or something like that. And again, if we plug something like Grok into this thing, we are going to have a really impressive robot here. It will be able to talk to us, carry on a conversation, but at the same time be able to do very, very useful work in the factory, and I believe at home as well. I even think the dexterity of these fingers is such that it could fold basic items like shirts and pants and things like that. Maybe not fitted sheets, because that's the devil, and fitted sheets, just nobody can fold those things. But aside from complicated things, it should be able to do some laundry folding as well. And that's sort of, in my mind, like the Turing test of a robot. If it can fold laundry, then it's basically a human being at that point. All right, so that's a first take on the next generation Teslabot. It is a very impressive beast. I think you will agree with me. Definitely let me know in the comments what you have to say about it. And while you're down there, please do like the video so other people can find it. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon, my YouTube channel members, and of course, my ex-subscribers. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel in any way that you can. And of course, if you want to join any of the teams, just check out the links in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have Teslabot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, success is a possible outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on and on. So check it out. And finally, a big thanks once again to ZBiotics for sponsoring today's video. Be sure to check out my link in the description. Use Dr. No at checkout and get 15% off your order. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.